Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Wild Winter Women YouTube channel. This is episode 9. I'm Leah Gruen, and I'm here tonight with Kendall Park. And we are going to be talking about the Iditarod Trail Invitational, which is a human-powered race on bike, foot, or ski that's taking place right now in Alaska, kind of cutting across the state. Tonight is currently the evening of Monday, March 3rd. I have some general updates and commentary on the race, but we're lucky tonight to have Kendall Park here to talk to us about her race. She is a racer participant who just completed the race a couple days ago on bike. This is her second time in the event. And Kendall and I have been friends for a few years. Some of the things I appreciate about Kendall are her strength and then also her experience and knowledge of fabrics and fibers and creative problem solving. So so she's here to talk about her race. So how'd it go, Kendall? Or do you want
went well.
sorry, do you
Wait.
want to introduce yourself first? I forgot that part.
My name is Kendall. I'm from Missouri, and I'm just we'll just say I'm a perpetual student. I'm in grad school at other schools as well. So yeah, that's about it. I used to play totally different sports. And now I'm too injured to do anything except ride my bike. So and then naturally, I guess I kind of went into the most niche, weird cycling discipline possible. So yeah, that's about me.
Great. Yeah, so how'd the race go?
It went great, honestly. Like that, I mean, it didn't I was telling people it didn't really feel like a race. It was kind of like I don't know. It was fun. I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
fun. I'm not like I'm pretty jazzed at how not mentally exhausted I am, now at the end of this. Because I remember at the end of, 2023, I was like, wow, like I just did something, and now I'm kind of, feel pretty rejuvenated after some sleep. And it was beautiful. It was still hard. Like it was still pretty hard, but like, um, it was nice to be able to move fast. It was nice to be able to not drag your bike through snow for an entire day. So yeah, like I feel like I had a great time.
Mm-hmm. Were there any like times or parts of the course that were particular highlights?
Oh my gosh, Rainy Pass. I'm sure everyone has told you this, but Rainy Pass was a dream. It was, compared to, in 2023, we got hit with like a snowstorm. It was on the west side of the range, but then it had, the winds were so strong, it just blew all that snow over for the most part. And so the pass was just like buried. And that was like like one of the hardest days on the bike I've ever had in terms of just dragging my bike up Rainy Pass. It took like the entire day and then some,
Mm-hmm.
to do that. Um, and then, this year we were just able to mostly just ride right up. And it was super windless, like for the most part. Even in the past, it was relatively windless. It was quite pretty, although I did it at night again. So I haven't seen the pass during the day. I'm sure the pass is beautiful during the day. But yeah, like Rainy Pass was awesome. Dalzo Gorge was great. A couple places you had to, maybe put on waders or do a very uh, tactful jump. But yeah, I thought, and then riding into Rhone was basically, there's a crazy tailwind, on the Tatina. And I even just skipped. There's like kind of like a part where you cut over into the land and like take an overland route into Rhone. I was just skipped it, and I was just like, I'm just gonna take the river the entire way,
Mm-hmm.
which Tatina is always a little sketchy, and so, but I don't know. I was barely pedaling, and the wind was just pushing me. I was just like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. Just follow the snowmobile tracks, and hopefully you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Did you see was any of the ice like broken looking?
Oh, I mean, my bike wheel fell through like this one section, that was kind of like I was just like pedal, 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 pedal. Like I was feeling my bike will like go, like and fall through. So it was falling through at least like some layer of the ice, like I think pretty early on in the Titina. But I saw some other pedal tracks there too, so I just kind of figured, sometimes it's better to just still stay where other people have gone versus
Hmm.
like try to, go off it, and so there was no giant gaping hole with like the signs that a cyclist had completely fallen through. So, but yeah, you could like my my back wheel was like cracking through ice and getting pretty wet, during that one section. But I just pedaled really hard, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that philosophy to stay on the trail.
Yeah, as much as it's possible, or at least like look for where other people have gone and tracks, because it's like you could be um I mean, like you could be going off, on literally onto some thin ice,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so um there were there was a point, on the Tatina where I had to kind of decide, um like, do I take the overland or do I just stay on this river? Because I know that you can get to Rhone obviously from the Tatina, and so I saw there was actually a marked snowmobile trail that I was able to follow like most of the way there, and I was
Hmm.
following snowmobile tracks. And so if it weren't that, then I probably maybe would have hugged the shoreline a little bit more. Um, I guess that was probably my riskiest decision, but with the tailwind, it actually maybe I was feeling a little bit too overconfident, in that. So
Yeah, and the Tuthics? How are the
uh,
Tuthics?
they were uh we had this huge debate, like tussocks or moguls, like which would you prefer? And it's like I would prefer moguls, mussocks. No, I would prefer
No.
moguls. Like I would prefer the moguls, because you actually are moving faster over them. Because the tussocks were kind of how would I describe it? It's like kind of like a boulder garden. Like it'd be like interesting boulder garden practice. Like you just have less chances of like ripping your sidewall. And some of them were
Hmm.
just like really rough to, like I walked a ton of it. I walked a ton of it. Like you'd either were just like burning a ton of energy doing like technical riding, or you just were walking around them and pushing your bike over them. I would actually had pretty mad respect for the Iron Doggers, because like they were riding their snowmobiles over the tussocks. It was pretty nuts. Like, and what we had, like, so all the terrible stuff that we had was actually the iron, like left over after the Iron Dog, like racers had mowed them down. So like it would have been so much worse had the Iron Dog kind of canceled or rerouted out of that area. So yeah,
Well, and
like
not to mention, like, for us, like a loaded bike is like, what, 70 pounds? I don't know. Is
yeah,
like heavy, but like an actual like snow machine or snowmobile is like
no, it's
way
huge.
more.
And
Yeah.
then way wider. You can't like necessarily pick a line in those cases. Once you get into the trees, like they're stuck on pretty much like one track, right? So I definitely, my respect went like way up for Iron Dog while I was doing that. I did find that the tussocks were like less mentally frustrating than moguls. Like moguls, I
Oh.
find, yeah. So moguls, I find to be like really kind of just irritating, and um, they were, whereas the tussocks were almost just sort of like, um, you just made your peace with them and you just walked, and your legs got a little bit of a break, you know. So I was never frustrated at the tussocks,
Yeah.
I never took it personally. The moguls were bad. And like 2023, there were, I think like I needed more sweep on my bars, and I ended up getting
Mm.
like carpal tunnel from from the moguls. So it was not a fun time. Even still, I would rather move faster. So um I think I'd still take the moguls at the end of the day.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Cool. Were there any like lessons learned that you had or things that you would do differently after this year, either in terms of like
Yeah.
your like approach, your setup, your sleep schedule, your food, hydration?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of came into this race like, thinking this is really just more of a shakedown for Nome, because like I've already been to McGrath and like, I've been looking past McGrath since then. And so there was, you know, there was an opportunity, I think, because of the weather, and it never got below, it only got below zero a couple times, and so that's not for the ITI, that's not that cold,
Right.
like yeah, like if it's not like cold starts at like, I don't know, -15 or so. That's when it starts. We call it start might calling it cold or something like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, 0 degrees, that's great. Everyone has the gear for that.
Hmm.
Um, and so like I knew it was going to be warmer. I knew it was going to be faster. Um, there were certain things that I carried that I wanted to try out to kind of give it a try. Um, I carried a little bit of extra weight. For example, I carried like the fast fly of a tarp tent moment, so I just had just the fly of the tarp tent moment. Um, which last time I didn't even have a bivy. Last time I just had a sleeping bag and a tarp, basically, along with like two sleeping pad, like two close cell foam sleeping pads for the ground. And this year um, I wanted to try the fly of a tent, just because I sometimes you get sucked into the aid stations,
Hmm.
and you're playing this like sort of checkpoint leapfrog where it's like, okay, when do I make the push to the next checkpoint? And I kind of wanted to see like what would happen if I could just like break myself out of that mentality and just like know, for certain that I could have, a comfortable or sheltered place to sleep, you know. Um, and so it actually wasn't too heavy. It's heavier than I'd want, I think, for Gnome, and I think I'd probably try to DIY something, that's a bit lighter. But that was the best sleep I got on the trail. Like the best sleep I got on the trail was, I think, at Finger Lake. Um, so Maya and I had just like we did a crazy push, like basically all the way to Finger Lake from the beginning. So we had like like a couple shorts that we skipped Yetna. Um, like we totally skipped Yetna. We went to Hooligans for a little bit, tried to take a nap, couldn't do it. Then we were just like, let's go to Squintna. Then we'd gotten to Squintna, refilled our supplies, and we were like, okay, let's get to Shell Lake. And then, we got into Shell Lake in the early morning, like took like an hour power nap, and then we just headed on to Finger Lake. And that's where we kind of parted ways. I was going to try to, my strategy, I was thinking I want to invert my sleep schedule, because it was so warm and so hot that, I don't quite have the gear. Like, I had to start getting creative with my gear. And then also the trail was getting sloppy, you know? And so because it was almost 30, it was getting up into the 30s, at some points. And so I was just like, I'll just ride at night. I love riding at night. I'd rather have like the firm trail at night. I have zero qualms with night riding. And so so Maya just, kind of went on ahead, and I was just like, okay, let's just see what happens if I can get like a little bit faster trail by trying to, hang out at Finger Lake for a little bit. And so I
Hmm.
left Finger Lake, I think probably like at 5 p.m. And then um the sun quickly set, and I'm just riding at night. And so when I finally got to this is honestly probably my least favorite section, in terms of the trail, because it's just super punchy, and punchy is the thing that I don't do well at. And so,
From Finger
so
Up to
I
Puntilla?
yeah, Fingertip on Puntilla is like, I think, my least favorite section of the trail.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because it's just like punchy. There's a lot of pushing up stuff. I got to see
Hmm.
Happy River Steps for the first time.
Oh,
Because I
great.
yeah, because I skipped the Happy River Steps. I took the mining road bypass. I took the mining road bypass the first time, and so totally skipped the Happy River Steps. This year, the mining road was totally not in. Like, there's
Hmm.
absolutely no mining road. whatsoever. No one's even tempted to take it because it's completely buried. And um, so I got to see the Happy River Steps for the first time. They're very steep. You know,
Yeah.
I did not even attempt to walk. I didn't attempt to ride them. One of my biggest, you know, metrics is like, in terms of how aggressively I ride something is like how many people are coming behind me, if I get knocked unconscious. So, I kind of figured that I was going to be, one of the only people kind of pushing, pushing that night.
Hmm.
So anyway, after all of the climbing, and there's quite a lot of climbing, I kind of like got to the top of like the last big sort of steady climb, and then I was really tired, like feeling sleepy, and I was just like, oh, I'll just bivvy at this point. And so I found a good spot, and that was the best sleep I got on the trail, like
Hmm.
hands down. The checkpoints are noisy, and because I basically stopped when I started getting really tired and sleepy, then I kind of guaranteed that, I was actually ready to go to bed as opposed to just kind of what I'd been doing before, even at Shell Lake and at Finger, was I was trying to sleep and I was really struggling,
Hmm.
to get to bed. So, um, got a straight 4.5 hours of sleep,
Nice.
and then, met the lead skier. Actually, he was coming up, right as I was packing up. So
Hmm.
we got and he was actually the person I would end up leapfrogging with like the entire rest of the
Oh,
way.
nice. That's
Yeah.
great.
I think it was funny because like you kind of have your cohorts that you end up with. You kind of settle into the same pace where you're hitting everything at the same time. But like for me, it just ended up being like the skier.
Hmm.
Like it was like me and the skier that kind of ended up around the same pace, and so we would always just be intersecting each other.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Fun.
so, yeah, in terms of new strategy, that was it. I was trying to, and the other thing I was trying to sleep less. So I actually didn't get a ton of sleep the whole, probably like around 10 hours of sleep the whole race. A lot of attempted sleep, but you know, um, I really wanted because the risks are so much lower when we're not getting below zero. I
Hmm.
kind of was like, well, this is a good chance to kind of see how far you can go without as much sleep, you know.
Hmm.
So you're not going to get yourself into any crazy, dire situations. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Well, yeah, there are no cars. There's a lot of reasons.
Yeah,
This isn't.
actually, even the snow machines, like there weren't snow machines
Yeah.
for the most part. We didn't have like a huge risk of snow machines. Like if you were gonna try some, try to really push yourself hard, like I think this would be like a good.
Hmm.
This would have been like the good time to do it.
Usually, if
So
you like fall over, it's like in snow, which is like falling into a pillow.
yeah, I was actually really lucky. I think I only wiped out like twice. That was it.
Good.
We didn't have any squirrely snow, like for the most part. There was just a little bit going into Shell, but we didn't have any snow where you're, trying to like ride the single line of
Mm-hmm.
firm snow,
Yeah.
you know, single line of firm snow, and everyone's like, you see the body prints left and right of,
Yeah.
like the cycle falling over because, you know, like it's just too bushy, you know. So, oh, and I rode flats this time. That was a big thing.
Oh,
I'm gonna keep riding flats. Um,
why did you like that better?
it's interesting. I have not ridden flats since like my days of, you know, riding my random beater MTB, like with sneakers on, right? Like I switched to, SPDs and never looked back. But there's just when you do these races, there's just, a lot of like clipping in and clipping out because you can't ride stuff. And so this happened so much when I was climbing Rainy Pass that I was getting so tired of like swinging my leg over the bike that
Mm-hmm.
I actually like pulled my groin, from swinging my leg over the bike because it was just on and off and on and off and on and off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of thinking that it would be nice to just be able to like, very quickly take my like feet off the pedals and back onto the pedals and then not have to do this, have that when you have that extra step of clipping in and then, you know, trying to ride your bike. Um, it was just way easier to start and stop, I think, or just
Hmm.
like at least way easier to get off the bike on the bike. And I think even more could probably be done um, when it comes to like my right leg does not know how to uh, you know, what's the term, dab or whatever the
Oh,
mountain bikers do. I can't I don't remember what the term. My right leg does not want to ever come off the pedal, but I think there's even more that could be done in terms of like improving technical riding, because you can just lift your feet off the pedals at any time.
yeah.
And I never felt like a huge efficiency difference, and it allowed me to wear a pair of soft boots, which I was pretty excited
I
about.
was gonna ask what kind of boots.
So I'm wearing, so I wore these Vivo barefoot mucklucks, and they are a totally not waterproof soft boot that my goal was to maximize breathability on the boot, and then supplement that with um, over boots if I needed it, or I could do I could do a VBL if I needed to. So I had all the
Hmm.
equipment to do a VBL if I needed to. Um, I have warm feet, so my biggest struggle is wetting out whatever I ride in. Um, the boots I wore in 23 were, I have like I think like a 2017 Wolfgar before they started sucking, and they put the boas on them and all this other
Mm.
stuff. Yeah, so I have like the old school laced up studdable
Hmm.
Wolfgars with the blue
Hmm.
laces and the quick, stuff. And for people watching, like why, as to why like this is a better boot. One is like the boas freeze. The boas and boas are terrible to field repair. Like you can't repair them in the field. And if you get your boot wet, the boa itself can freeze, and so like that's a super dangerous situation. Like if you're at like -40 and you get, your boot, falls in through the ice, that water is going to freeze so quick, and you need to get your foot like out of the boot, or else you could be looking at losing your foot, you know. And so that boa will freeze, right? And so then you're looking at trying to clip the laces. You're going to have to clip these wire laces in order to get it out. Whereas like the laces on the old school Wolfgars, um, you should be able to like get your foot out faster,
Hmm.
or cut them with a knife. You could cut them with a knife if you needed to. You don't necessarily need to like wire clip. And then additionally, you can field repair laces. They're just laces. You just get some string, and you know. And so I had the old school Wolfgars, and they have that super thin wool liner that everyone hates, but I love, because again, I have hot feet, and so like
Hmm.
I wore pretty much that and maybe a VBL in 2023, and I was totally fine. And so the current boots that I have now, I modified them a bunch. I modified their lacing system a bunch. Um, but yeah, my goal was just to have something that was way more breathable, um, so that I wouldn't have to do a VBL system.
Hmm.
I do not like, I'll do it, but I don't like it. No one likes having wet feet. So,
Right.
um,
So for viewers, what Kendall's talking about VBL, vapor barrier liner. So it's basically like a plastic bag or a coated nylon sock or something that prevents perspiration from your feet from leaving and going out into your socks and boots, and then
yeah,
ultimately evaporating.
right. Because like essentially the heat follows the water, right? So, um, like, and water conducts heat out of your shoes, so essentially like you're locking all the heat in, but you're locking all the water in. And so like the compromise you're making with VBLs is, your foot's going to get super pruny and soft, and so like over time, if you're not like changing out your sock, or doing other things to try to dry out your feet in between checkpoints, that becomes blisters and sores and trench foot maybe. So like it's all compromises. Whereas if you take the wool liner, so if you have the wool liner wet out, then suddenly there's like a point of conduction between the cold outside through the water to your foot, and so you could be looking at frostbite if you like have your wool liner wet out. a lot of people use like the Intuition liners, which are closed cell foam, and the closed cell foam is actually kind of its own VBL. Waters actually can't
Hmm.
pass through them. Yeah, so the Intuition liners are actually VBLs, but I think they're fairly well designed to absorb tons of moisture, so they don't feel like that wet,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. I always do a vapor barrier liner because not only does it like eliminate evaporative cooling, that's the bigger reason, but then like later when I take my boot liners off in my boots, I don't have to worry about them freezing. Like they always are just dry. They never turn into like rocks overnight. So,
Yeah. Whereas, well, for me, it's like I mean, I just hate the wet foot feeling. Like I don't like the wet foot feeling, and then I just have hot feet, and so
oh,
like they're gonna be swimming, pretty
yeah,
quickly.
you're
I
lucky.
use like I know I would rather have it my way than other people's way,
Yeah.
like having a cold foot issue, but but I mean, I use like an antiperspirant foot cream and and I tried these Ninja socks, which is kind of a trade off because you're getting, they're toe socks. So
Mm,
like it's a trade off between like a lot of times you want your toes close together because, that helps with warmth. But in this case, in my case, having that extra fabric between the toes helps with, moisture management because you
okay.
have like more surface area to,
Hmm.
absorb the moisture. So those are okay. I did find my second toe getting cold, and so I'm not sure. I'd have to think of whether or not I'm going to run them again. I have some crazy ideas for my boots. Someone told me about how Dallas CV actually uses these like disposable cotton liners to absorb moisture in his boots, and so like
Hmm.
now I've got like after I do my like 9 paragraph review of the Vivo Barefoots and all their pros and cons, I'm going to start experimenting with fast drying cotton solutions where I can like have something that can absorb the moisture, and just keep flipping them out essentially.
That's
um
great. Yeah, and for the listeners, Dallas CV is someone I think he's won like 4 Iditarods and comes from a long mushing line of mushing
it is a six,
family.
isn't it? Is
Oh,
it
okay,
six? It
sure.
might be six. I could be wrong. But
Hmm.
he's like super innovative. He's like created his own boots from
Yeah.
scratch. And I was watching a video of his, and he uses these sort of cotton liners like in between the wool insole and his outer boot. He uses like a sort of cotton sock. It's not an actual sock. It's like a towel that's sewn into like a big sock shape.
Huh.
And cotton is like super hydrophilic. It loves water. That's why we all tend to avoid it um, when we're doing outdoor things. The whole
Hmm.
saying "cotton kills."
Hmm.
It absorbs. I don't know. This is something like 17 times its weight in water. It just loves water and it holds onto it, really well. And so he has a sock that basically he's using the properties of cotton to like pull the water out of his wool insole, so his wool insole stays dry, and then he just has this like kind of cotton sock that he can change out at checkpoints. And so I want to see, how that works because
Yeah.
I really, the boots I'm wearing, like I can wear them indoors, right? Because like they're that breathable. And so like if I can keep, running these particular boots, that'd be great. And they work really well with the flats. Like the tread on the bottom of the boot just locks in. Like I saw there were some other people who run flats that I showed them the boot and how they interfaced with the flats, and they were like, "Whoa, like what boots are these?" This is
Yeah.
like crazy how, you know, how well these like lock together. And so, yeah, that's a lot on feet.
Yeah. Deep dive.
Yeah. Deep dive on feet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
great. Cool. Should we cut to some pictures?
oh yeah, for sure. Let's go here. Okay, Leah, I forgot how to do this screen share.
Is there a button up at
Oh,
the
found
top?
it. I found it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So here we go. We're riding out to the swamp, like after Big Lake. Um, I didn't take a ton of pictures at the start because, you know, um, everyone's like, I don't know, we're always just like rushing to Butterfly Lake, even though it really actually doesn't matter that much in the end.
Hmm.
Um, when I redo this again, I'm not rushing to Butterfly Lake. I told myself that I would not rush to Butterfly Lake this time, and I did it anyway. And so next time, I am not rushing to Butterfly Lake. I
Yeah.
promise, cross my heart. And you can kind of see where
Riding into the sunset.
I took it was funny. There's a section I can show you. There's a section where, there's a whole snowmobile maze and there's like a bajillion different that you can get. So here's Butterfly Lake right here. And then there's just a bajillion different ways that you can actually get to the sustain it.
Yeah, so for the viewers, this is at the beginning of the race near Anchorage, and one of the rules in the race is that you just need to go to checkpoints in order, but you don't need to follow a specified route. And kind of right on the outskirts of, kind of near Anchorage and Wasilla, Big Lake, there's just kind of a web of snowmobile trails. And so it's always a little bit unclear as to what the fastest, best route is. So you have people going different ways and trying to try stuff out, see what kind of condition certain trails are in. It's a big mystery.
Yeah,
Or big challenge.
It's like a whole thing, and it ultimately doesn't amount to that much in the end, but it's like quite a lot of it's quite a lot of like testing your nav skills, I guess, at the beginning of the race. And so I actually took like a shortcut that I kind of discovered by watching the Iron Dog, and I watching the Iron Dog last year, and I gave this route to Daniel Perry, and he tried it out, and it worked out well for him. And he hit some soft snow and had to walk a bit. Leah, I think you tried. No, you didn't. No, it was a bunch of you. I think the Italians and some other people attempted this, and then they turned back last year.
Mm.
And so essentially, like this is pretty standard. This route right here,
Through the
where you
dismal
go like,
swamp.
yeah, you go through the swamp and then you make this big right-hand turn, like this 90-degree turn, and then you come back down, and then enter right here. Well, there's actually like a way that you can kind of cut across here, Yeah, that's totally, this is a route that a lot of the Iron Doggers use. And I was just like, why not? It's a fast year. Why not try this? And so it was kind of funny because like, I had so many people. It was very hard for me to find like the beginning of this trail. And so I was just riding off into this like marsh, and I had so many people that were like whistling at me like, "Hey, Kendall, come on." And I was just like, "I'm fine. I'm fine." And yeah, and it all worked out. I actually met up with Maya right here. She was stopped right here and just sees me coming like totally out of the, like totally out of the side. And I was just like, "Hey, I told you I was going to catch up to you with my shortcut." So yeah.
Cool. So it ended up being an actual shortcut.
Oh yeah, it was an actual shortcut. It was a shortcut
Great.
for Dan, even though he had to last year, even though he had to walk a bit. So I did a bit of. You can watch the Iron Dog footage, and I did a bit of watching the footage of them returning, and I was like pretty sure it was put in. And I talked to some people about the status of whether this creek that it crosses would be frozen, and I was pretty sure that the creek would be frozen. So then it was just a matter of doing it and committing to it. And so yeah,
Great.
so that was kind of fun. And then so and then I don't have like a ton of pictures. Maya and I did like a huge push after this. Like we were riding together like this whole time. We skipped Yetna. We skipped Yetna station, which is at mile 50, 55. We just decided, hey, we can get to Hooligans, because Hooligans is at I think around mile 65. And so like it was just like another 15 miles up the Yetna. And so, we went to Hooligans, and then we were just like, well, then let's just go to Squintna. And then we just ended up at Finger Lake. And so like, I guess this is the picture of, this is the picture right here of the sun rising. And we haven't slept at all. We slept like maybe like an hour or so at this point. And then this is me leaving Finger Lake right here. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
leaving Finger Lake, the sun's setting. And it's going to be just basically a long night, kind of rode till midnight, and that's kind of where I camped right here. It was actually hard to find a place because there was quite a lot of snow in this section, so it was hard to find a place to pull off. And so I pulled off in this little place where it's sort of like a little fun extracurricular snowmobile trail. You could tell that some snowmobilers had taken some stuff over, and I put my blinky light on top of my tent in order to make sure that
nice.
no one would. Yeah, I saw a skier do that once, I think in 23, and I was like, that is smart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically I put my blinky light on top of my tent and went to bed.
Yeah.
That was nice. And then this
Yeah,
is
oftentimes at night I'll have like a red blinky light on my bike and I'll just turn that on.
mm-hmm.
So it's like facing, the direction where traffic might be coming from.
Right. Yeah, I kind of like put my bike. So here's the trail right here, and then right here, you can see my mouse, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So right here is where the extracurricular snowmobile fun zone is, and you can tell it wasn't used for a really long time, but essentially, like I had my blinky light facing the way that they might come up, and then I had my bike in between the trail and my tent. The trail where they would likely be driving by, just to kind of be maximum safe.
Yeah.
And then this is like sunrise, so I'm getting into. So I got up at like, I think I started rolling maybe around 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. in the morning, and so I'm getting into Puntilla at this point. Sun's rising, and I guess that's Rainy Pass. So,
yeah, the high point of the whole course.
yeah, high point of the whole course. Yeah, so I got into Puntilla, and then it was perfect. I got in at 9. I ate breakfast, ate a huge breakfast, and took a nap, and then I was out sometime in the afternoon. I think maybe 2 or 3. I can't remember. 3, yeah, it was sometime after 3. And I was just like, well, I'm gonna do the pass at night again. And so it was like me and the skier, me and Tucker. Tucker and I were heading up the pass together, and it we did a ton of leapfrogging because there's sections that I can ride and sections that I have to push, and then that he can climb up, and so that's like me at the top of Rainy Pass, which is totally different from last time. Last time it was like a ground blizzard at Rainy Pass. I was debating even taking a video of the pass. Like I remember when I was taking the video of that sign, there's like, raging wind. I was just like, am I like doing something stupid by even stopping here to take this video? Like, am I endangering myself by even stopping here? And so here it's like, it's like basically you could hear birds chirping or something. Like it's just so quiet. We had a lot of like water crossings and stuff like that. So, or just like sketchy holes that were in the ice. And yeah, but I made it to Rhone. The Aurora was out, which was cool.
Wonderful.
This is Ski Buddy.
Oh yeah.
And so getting into Rhone, it's actually really awesome to get in late, I think, because everyone does the pass. Everyone wants to do the pass during the day. That makes sense. It's beautiful, but then everyone kind of like ends up at Rhone, at a certain time. And if you come late, then you can potentially have the tent to yourself, And so, which we did. It was just like 2 of us.
Well, they have the first in, first out policy. So if you were the first ones in early in the evening, then people came in throughout the evening, and then late in the evening, then you'd have to be booted out.
Right. So it almost like guarantees that you're gonna have a spot to sleep.
Yeah.
If you come in late. The the downside is you don't get to see the pass during the day. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then this is leaving. So this is leaving on the Tatina. There was actually two different ways. We can even show you. I can even show you. There's two different ways that people could get out, and it kind of confused a lot of people. Like a lot of people got lost in this, and so there was like, so here's Roan right here, and like you could either cross the Tatina immediately and just end up in the woods, and then you're on this wooded path for a while, or you could keep going down the river and then find another, and there was another place to cross up ahead. But what's crazy is like in between there, the river was totally open, and so like you could see that you were like parallel, I guess, to the trail. And so like I did this whole thing where I was following the trail, but I didn't really know. I knew that I wasn't on the path that I was on in 2023, so I knew that I was not doing the same thing I did in 2023. But I also was kind of like, I'd rather be on the ice than on the dirt, because there was not going to be any snow, as soon as I hit the overland. And so I just kind of followed all the snowmobile tracks and hit a place where I could cross. And yeah, it was back on the trail. And then, oh, it was a lot of dirt. Like you can see, we're just lots of dirt leaving the, I don't know, is this Farewell Lake? I can't remember. But we're just
I don't
leaving.
think so. I thought
No.
that, yeah, not quite.
Yeah, it's not quite Farewell. I think it's the one after Farewell Lake. Yeah, it's just a lot of dirt, which was fairly fast. And then here is the sign for the shelter cabin. That's a complete lie. It's not 5 miles. I went to the shelter cabin, and that was, I think, like a mistake, because it was such an ordeal getting out there without the trail cut in. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's like if I could redo it, I wouldn't have stopped at the shelter cabin.
Like it was like the tuffix that were the problem.
Yeah, so all of the trail that you've seen, so like this is when this is what the trail looks like when the tussocks are mowed over by the iron dog, right? So this is what it looks like when the tussocks are mowed over. They are so much worse when the iron dog is not like follow. It looks more like on the left right here. Like it's just like you're bushwhacking, and so we were like bushwhacking to the cabin. And so what ended up happening is like myself and this other guy had like intersected right at the cabin intersection, and we were debating over whether or not to go to the cabin. And the cabin in general, like cabin gets like way better the more people you have up until a certain point, because you can split the wood gathering duties, because everyone gets warm by the same fire, but you have more people to split the work of making the fire and cutting the wood and all this other stuff. And so we kind of made this deal of like, I'll go if you go, but there was so much bushwhacking. I almost like I wanted to turn around like halfway through, because I was like, this is not worth it. But he had just gone up all way ahead, and I was just like, a deal's a deal. I'm not gonna, just turn around if I can't, tell him like, hey, I don't think this is worth it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like it was warm, it was nice. I left, but if I could do it again, I probably would have just continued on and bivvied somewhere. There was a whole group of people that came in that night, though, so I think it worked out well for them as well.
Right.
Because some people I think might have been wet, and needing to dry off or something. So
yeah, that's a challenge there, because there's not much available wood right up by the cabin. So
see, I preempted that and collected wood as I went in.
And that's when I was looking at this picture, that's what I was thinking of. That's what it reminded me of, what, because I was like, oh yeah, that's where I gathered wood. attached as much to my pan or my rear rack as I could to
Yeah,
load up on
exactly.
the way in.
Yeah. It did, but it made my bike like much harder to push through the
Mm.
push to the brush. So yeah, in hindsight, would not have done it again. I do think that it kind of may have inadvertently saved me from a much longer night than I anticipated, because in my head I was like, Sullivan Creek is only 8 miles away. I could just go to Sullivan Creek and then bivvy somewhere near Sullivan Creek after I get water. But the critical flaw in that plan is Sullivan Creek is by definition at a very low elevation, and so it was way cold. When I went to Sullivan Creek,
Mm.
it was so cold, and so that would have been bad. Like it would have been bad if I had, and I'm sure I would have been like, this is not a place I can bivvy. But you get to Sullivan Creek, and then you'd have to be like, no, I need to push, up to some higher elevation.
Yeah.
For like the people listening, like Alaska has a lot of temperature inversions, and so a lot of people think like, oh, you go higher, it gets colder. Well, no, in Alaska, um, the lower you are, the colder it tends to be. You have like all that
Mm-hmm.
cold air coming down, and the only thing that's going to change that is like you need like some high wind or something to kind of mix up the air in order for that in order to have that altitude effect. And so generally, lower equals colder, in Alaska. And so like near that creek, it was really, really cold.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would have probably been a bad idea. But I think overall it would have, I would have ended up way farther down the trail after all said and done. I was also like in just a really good mood and not super tired. And so why I decided to stop at the cabin, I don't know.
Right.
Oh well. It worked out. It worked out fine,
Mm-hmm.
in the end. So yeah, and then I think got into Nikolai. Oh yeah, here I'll just continue. So here's
Yeah.
all our fun Tussocks fun. The Aurora was out for 3 nights in a row. It was beautiful. The pictures don't
Wonderful.
really capture it. Um, that's a tussock.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically like a bowling ball with a bunch of uh, grass on it, and those are my fancy soft boots. Um, so I got into Nikolai. Let me see. I got into Nikolai um, probably around 6 p.m. And then I had just talked to the skier. I think like while I was riding to Nikolai, I'd passed the skier again, and I was just like, let's just turn and burn, once we get to Nikolai, and stuff like that. Because I was feeling really good that day. I guess it was Thursday, so I was feeling super good Thursday, and I was just like, let's just turn and burn. And then something happened, and I was like maybe 5 miles out of Nikolai. And like when I turned into the headwind, and then something just like snapped, and it was just like bam. I was
Mm.
like so tired. I felt sick. I was like exhausted, felt sick. Something was like really off, and I started having like
Mm-hmm.
these weird, just something was just really weird mentally. I was just like, this is odd. And so when I got into Nikolai, um, I was worried about you know, maybe I was like having some like acute kidney injury because I hadn't, Sullivan Creek, it had taken a while to get there, and I hadn't been drinking enough water and I hadn't peed like the whole day. And,
Mm-hmm.
ultra racers are always like on that edge of like, we're always on the edge of AKI, like always riding that line. And so, and I had like edema, like the edema was pretty bad. Although I feel like
Mm-hmm.
edema is always bad with everyone, and Nikolai were always like pooped
Yeah.
out, But so I had the racer's edema, and but the thing that wigged me out was that sudden snap of like feeling sick, like
Huh.
and fatigued, like all of a sudden, just like instantly sick, fatigued, and like feeling very weird in my head.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was sitting there and debating, and I was just like, no, okay, like you're gonna stop, like you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
stop and you're gonna sit here and you're gonna chug. I took like maybe a 2 hour nap, woke up and I was just like, you're going to stop and you're going to sit here and you're going to chug water until, until things start feeling normal again. And so, I was just treating it like it was like, AKI, and I think probably chugged like 10 liters of water,
Yeah.
10 liters of water until things started flowing again. And I started like feeling relatively confident. The edema started draining. I had my feet up, on the bed, and was just like, basically just doing tons and tons of, hydration just to try to push water through the kidneys and make sure everything was okay. Because I was just thinking to myself, like, this would be the dumbest thing ever if I, like, in the interest of finishing just a little bit earlier, like collapse like on my way to McGrath because I wanted to like have one higher placement, so I was just like, no, because again, at the end of the day, the goal is Nome, not not to be I guess fifth instead of sixth place or something. And so so I actually didn't get that much sleep at McGrath. I was mostly busy. I got maybe a 2-hour nap, and then was spending the rest of my time chugging water and very terribly, in my fatigue state, trying to pack up. And I also was taking caffeine again to try to as a diuretic, trying to push water out. And so once I felt like, okay, my kidneys are probably in the clear, then I was able to leave. And so I have this this is like a great picture because this is like how it looked for me when I was writing. Yeah. Because I was so tired, like sleepy wise. So I was super sleepy at the time, but my legs were really, really fresh because I had walked a ton of the tussocks. I didn't try to like do a ton of like technical riding on the tussocks. And so my legs were super fresh, but my mind was super tired. And so I was just kind of like, and it was flat. We had a crazy tailwind. The course was super fast, and so, and very straightforward because you're just riding on the river for the most part. And so so my legs were like spinning super fast, but I was just like, like half awake. I was just half awake. And like it was like the aurora's out above me, so I'm just in this like green tunnel, fuzzy green tunnel, like with my legs spinning super fast. And but it was great because one, I was really burning. I was like getting like 10 miles an hour,
Nice.
10 miles an hour, and the time went by super quickly because I was just like, ooh, and so I finished.
I remember that from in 2023, you had like, I think the fastest time in the last few miles into the checkpoint. Into the finish line. So I remember that you're really good at finishing strong. And so
I had the Hall Road. Yeah, I had the Hall Road at QM for quite a while. But
and then on this part, I was talking to my husband, Dre, and he was like, oh my gosh, Kendall's going so fast. She's going like 10 miles an hour. I was like, yep, Kendall finishes strong. So good for you.
So clearly I like have some issue with like retaining too much energy towards the end, I guess. But that was nice because I was able to keep like a pretty steady, like super fast pace for 7.5 hours or 6.5 hours. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I think it took me 6.5 hours to get to took me like a little less than 6.5 hours, I think, to get to McGrath. Which is funny because they kept telling me like it's gonna take 10, probably closer to 10, 6 to 10. So I had like stocked up on water. I was ready for the slog, but it just turns out that like the tailwind, and I just had tons of energy left in my legs, and so I was just like, well, let's just burn this all out.
So you were 6.5 hours from McGrath to the finish?
I left it after 3 and I got in at 9:28. So yeah, I left after 3 a.m. and got in at 9. Yeah, it was, I mean,
because off the top of my head, I think the 3 fastest guys, I thought one was 6.5, one was 7, one was 7.5.
Well, that'd be cool to check.
Yeah, I want to check to see.
Yeah,
I'm sure you had one of the fastest times.
that's funny.
Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome.
It's like the Hall Road all over again, except over
Yeah,
6. Yeah, they thought
cool.
yeah, the Hall Road, yeah, when that happened, it was in 23. Basically, we had spent the entire day doing the overland route, and it was mushy. And so, like the entire day, you're just like trying to ride this like thin line and falling
Turned
over
up,
all the
yeah,
time.
turned up by snowmobiles coming through. It was really hard to stay on your bike. You just
Yeah,
ended up walking a lot of it. It was frustrating. It was warm.
and then we finally hit the Hall Road, which is like, um, it's a much more put in snowmobile. It's probably a gravel road. No,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
it
sure.
is a gravel
I
road.
think it's a
So it,
gravel road in real life, like in the when it's all melted and stuff. And it wasn't fast. Like the actual track wasn't fast, but I was just like, I have spent the entire day like not riding my bike, and I'm gonna freaking ride my bike.
yeah, yeah, because it's like a road, but it's not plowed necessarily.
Right,
So it's like
right.
graded and banked and wide and all that, but not plowed.
Yeah, and so yeah, I was just like, I'm gonna just ride because I have all this pent up leg energy or whatever.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, maybe the moral of the story is unless I have, as long as my kidneys are okay, then I'll leave for McGrath a bit earlier because clearly I
Hmm.
have more energy to spend. So yeah, and then
Yeah.
I got to spend a ton of time after the race with people. Like last race, I left pretty much immediately the next day. Um, it was just funny because last time I finished on Sunday, right? And so I was finishing Friday morning. Last time I finished
Hmm.
Sunday evening. And so like it's a big difference in time. Some of that's
Hmm.
the conditions, and some of that's probably conditioning, and some of that's probably just the race strategy of just sleeping less. And so like the time improvement was pretty significant in terms of between the 2 years.
Yeah.
So, but I got to spend a lot of time just hanging out with other people and chatting, and that's always super special because there's only like a certain number of people who are like kind of crazy enough to do these sort of things for fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Do you have any more pictures?
Do I have any more pictures?
Or is just
Uh,
at the end?
I had like this whole like album, and then I don't know why it. Yeah, so here we got. This is at the very end. We're both putting our legs up to drain the edema out. And then we did a lot
So
of
that's
hanging out.
that's the lodge, which is at the essentially at the finish line. So that's Kendall and Maya after they had finished the race with their legs up.
And then here's my finished picture. I this is one of those things where like I had no idea how ridiculous I looked like until this year, and now it's just like, okay, so I make a lot of my own gear, and so I have this like onesie that I wear that's made out entirely out of Alpha Direct, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like you're next time we're gonna try to make it at least look cool. It's highly functional, but I think the coolest factor is a little I look kind of like I'm going to a pajama party on Dune. um
I love it.
yeah, so I'll try to be cooler next time in terms of what I'm wearing. But yeah, yeah. So I don't think I have a ton of other pictures.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. And so what piece, if someone were like interested in the ITI, what advice would you give them?
I would say, oh gosh, if someone's interested in the ITI,
Yeah, interested in
um,
doing it, racing it.
so I think a lot of people obsess over the qualifiers more than they should. I think that what you really want more than anything is well, it kind of depends on what your gaps are. But I think a lot of people they think like, oh, if I do these like two, if I do two of the qualifiers, then I'm good for the ITI. And in 2023, we found that to like simply not be the case. The people like actually the top of the women's field were people who didn't actually have all or any of the any of the qualifiers done. It was people that had more winter experience, more winter, or just or backcountry experience. People who had more backcountry experience, navigation experience, winter experience, and that sort of thing. So because I didn't have both qualifiers in, but you're submitting an application, right? You're not submitting like, ooh, I have these two qualifiers and then I'm in. You're submitting an application that's essentially like your resume in terms of what kind of experience you've had. And so like, you know, Corey, who finished ahead of me, she's had a ton of winter camping experience. And so it's just like, she knows how to handle herself in the cold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Kenzie, who was the first place woman in 2023, you know, she's from Anchorage. She's an outdoors person. She has tons and tons of cold experience as well, you know. And so I do think that getting more backcountry experience and getting more navigation experience and cold experience, I would highly recommend that over just focusing on the race qualifiers. You'll
Mm-hmm.
find a lot of people, especially during a hard year, you're going to find a lot of people who have done the qualifiers but are totally not prepared to do the race, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
people who have gotten themselves into serious trouble because they don't know how to do navigation, right? And so they get lost. They get like pretty badly lost or something like that. Or they don't, or they're just not confident in their camping skills. I think like the thing that helped me the most before the ITI, I essentially had this kind of choice. There was like a bike packing trip that was happening with some friends of mine, and this winter bikepacking trip, and there was also Arrowhead, and they were on the same weekend, and I had to kind of choose between the two of them, and I chose the 200-mile 4-day bikepacking trip. You know, and it was actually even in the same area. You
Mm-hmm.
know, over Arrowhead, and I totally like don't regret that decision. Like that was before, it was in 2023. It was like 3.5 weeks before I headed out to the ITI. It got down to negative 30, and there's just something like sleeping outside for multiple days. There's just stuff that you learn about how your body reacts to the cold for successive days,
Mm-hmm.
that I think the races are just not going to teach you, especially when you like, because you just need to be able to, I think, you know, be out there, you know,
Yeah.
for many days at a time. So yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
what I would recommend. I would recommend, you know, if you don't have good backcountry experience, go bike packing. You know, like go bike packing, go get your backcountry experience. It helps to have experience with self rescue. That's a huge one because you know in the ITI, you know, it says like in big bold red letters, like like you are responsible for your own evacuation from the course, right? So yeah, so like you shouldn't you can't expect to have like an evac, right? And so there are situations like that you should get yourself into where you need
Mm-hmm.
to actually handle an emergency, you know? And so like for example, I think my first backcountry bikepacking trip, um I ended up like tearing, like my tire actually tore at the bead, you know, and I had to
Mm.
sew it back together in order to like ride back into civilization or whatever. And so that's something that like, you know, I'd never done it before. I just knew it was theoretically possible, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you do those sorts of things, you gain like a lot of confidence that whatever the emergency is, you can handle it. So yeah, that's what I recommend. More backcountry experience, more
Cool.
bikepacking experience, self rescue, become more
Yeah.
ride solo,
Yep.
alone at night, you know, just get confident, you know, in your ability to respond to emergencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great advice. Cool. Thanks. Anything else you'd like to share?
I don't know. People were very curious about my CPAP.
Yeah.
my uh just so people like my random Dune face mask, just so you know, That's like my attempt at a heat and moisture exchanger. It worked really well. Let me see. I can share this. Yeah, here you go. A lot of people were confused about what I was wearing, and so we have these. There's a lot of different ways that you try to warm your breath. Ahead of before you breathe it in, because you get bronchoconstriction and all sorts of terrible things from breathing in the cold, dry air. And so they're called heat and moisture exchangers. And so people wear like cold Avengers. They wear a buff over their face. They wear there's the air trim and a couple other ones that people have. And I just had I do weird things, and so it's just like this right here. I saw a picture of CPAP, and I was just like, maybe this will work, because then I can like breathe in the warm air, that's under my helmet, and it did. My lungs were great. So I I I think it's probably too ridiculous looking to become the new meta, but if you are someone who struggles with cold induced bronchoconstriction, go look at go look into your, like, I don't know, like go to eBay and find yourself like a good ResMed CPAP mask, and yeah. So that's about it.
Cool. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your pictures with us. Sure appreciate it. There's a lot of knowledge, obviously, and they're hard earned. It's come with time and experience. That's really cool. So congratulations on your race for your second.
Oh, thank you.
Finish in the 350. Cool. So I have some updates, just kind of what else is going on in the race. Do you want to stick on, Kendall, or?
Yeah, I'll stick on.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. So today in the race, some, I guess, exciting news. Just the weather is still warm, very warm, creating soft and warm conditions for racers. One of the 1,000-mile racers, Gavin, is he bivvied out last night, and we heard that he, let's see here, he was bivvying out and it was raining on him overnight. So, yeah, not ideal. And the leader in the bike race, Pete Delamere, is making his way down the Yukon River. He's now past Galena, between Galena and Nulato, and conditions appear to be soft with the warm temperatures. His speeds, when I've been looking, have been like between 2 and 4 miles an hour. And he's a very strong rider. And so that conditions are tough if the leader is going at that speed. Also, the Iditarod dog sled race started today in Fairbanks. So this year, as I mentioned in one of the previous episodes, the Iditarod dog sled race route changed. And so about the first half of the race is going to be off of the Iditarod Trail. But then it will join up with the Iditarod Trail in Ruby. And we have a number of racers in Ruby right now. That's at about mile 319 on the dog sled race route. Like I said, the dog sled race started this morning, and last I looked, most of the teams were in the first checkpoint, which is just over 50 miles into the race. So the dog teams are making good time. They might be able to speed up overnight once they're not in sunny warm conditions during the day. Because a lot of the dogs get kind of tired in the heat. So, what's exciting is once the dog teams reach Ruby at mile 319, then at that point, they will have the opportunity to see some of the racers who are on the Yukon River at that point. So when I was a racer, that was always a highlight to see the dog teams and the mushers. And then finally, Geiska has made it back to McGrath under his own power. He was at the first safety cabin past McGrath, about 50, 60 miles. and he stayed there for about 12 hours, and then he decided to turn around and head back to McGrath, and he is dropping out of the race. Commend Geiska for getting back under his own power. Like Kendall was saying earlier, it's important to be able to self-rescue when needed. And so good job. And sorry that you weren't able to continue on, Geiska. Kind of a bummer. Geiska is a returning racer. He raced to Nome in 2022. And previously the COVID in 2020, and he was one of the luckily 8. So in the race, we started with 104 racers. We have 5 drops. There's still 31 racers on the trail as of this evening. 26 are in the 1,000-mile race, and not all of them have come into McGrath yet, and there are 3 still in the 350, both on bikes and skis. There have been a number of finishers since yesterday's episode. Luke Thomas came in, Stuart Banks, Joe Davis, Bryce Williams, Jason Davis, a good friend from South Dakota. We spent a lot of time on the trail together, racing Tour Divide in 2017, in addition to seeing him at other winter events. Eric Johnson, Luke Thomas, David Parnell, Jason Hutchins, and Jan and Petra Frank, who were both on skis. There are a couple from the Czech Republic. They just finished their 10th honeymoon with man cakes in place of wedding cake. They chose the river over the overland route. So congratulations to Petra and Jan. Jan raced the 1,000 to Nome on skis last year, and this year he came back with his wife. After they finished was Dean Denter, and then after that was Alexandra Manley. And she is the final racer in the women's bike field. So at this point, all the women bikers have reached McGrath. So she was a volunteer favorite when she was on the trail. She left Nikolai towards the finish in McGrath with an infectious positivity that left Amber Bethy and the other volunteers absolutely glowing. She said, "I love riding even when I hate it." She's been traveling with thank you cards for ITI volunteers and delivering them with sincere gratitude along the way. You got to appreciate hand delivering stationery all the way 350 miles from the start up and over the Alaska range. That's very cool. And the attitude and appreciation like Alex's is sure to get her anywhere she wants to go out on this beautiful trail. She's a Fairbanks local and ITI rookie, but she's no stranger to winter ultras with 3 finishes in her backyard event, which is the White Mountains 100, and a 2021 finish in the Tanana River Challenge. Competing on the ITI has been a childhood dream for Alex, who fundraised and worked hard to make it to this year's starting line. She said, "There must be over 200 people who have supported my racing and training in some way, from my friends and strangers on my GoFundMe to the volunteers and race directors in various races. When I'm riding, I bring with me everyone who has ever helped me, and I feel like I'm never alone on the trail. The support is truly overwhelming." So congratulations, Alexandra. Keep inspiring us with your contagious energy, and congrats on your first ITI. Can't wait to see what you are up to next. For 1,000-mile racers, what we have now at this point is all the bikers spread between the Yukon River, and the furthest are back by Nikolai. Pete Delamere, oh yeah, we already talked about him. So some of the racers are between him and the town of Ruby. Ruby is the first town that racers arrive at on the Yukon River. There's a bed and breakfast where most of the racers stay, and at that bed and breakfast there are hot meals available on a bed. It's a desolate ride on the nearly 190 miles that it takes to get there from McGrath. There's only one village just 18 miles past McGrath, and then 2 shelter cabins, and a drop bag at Cripple, and there is an abandoned kind of open cabin in another town where the Italians in Perry stayed last night. I'm not sure if the door closes on it or not. I think it was a good thing that it was a relatively warm night, and that's in a ghost town, and you go through other ghost towns within a mining district that's been largely abandoned. So Gavin is also in the trail. He's the first 1,000-mile racer on foot. After that is Eric Bassett. He's the lone skier this year in the 1,000, and he left McGrath today. And then there are currently 4 people in McGrath resting up, who will be leaving sometime soon. Kari Gibbons is the first woman of 2. She made it to McGrath just after 3 a.m. She started Wild Winter Women as a way for women to support each other who are interested in getting into and competing in winter ultramarathons such as this one. The philosophy is that not one of us as an individual has all of the answers, but collectively we have a lot of solutions and a lot of information, a lot of support to offer each other. And that's where I met Kendall, is at a event that she had organized at her house to, work on skills and share knowledge and get to meet each other. Also, she was joined on the trail by Luke Thomas and Peter Eineman, both participants in the 1,000 mile race. Also, we've seen today Magdalena Pasche make it to McGrath, as well as Peter Eineman and Daniel Heon. So I think that's all we have for tonight. Thank you for sticking with us this long. There's a lot more info available out there on Instagram, on the Wild Winter Women page, on the ITI Alaska page, Facebook on Iditarod Trail Invitational, and the ITIAlaska.com website. So, give us feedback. I'm curious to know what you're interested in hearing more about, what questions you have, and suggestions for future episodes. So thanks so much for being with us. Have a good evening, everybody.